Good afternoon and welcome to the May 21st, 2025 Technical Review Committee meeting. My name is Anna Barge and I'm the Senior Planner with Oldham County Planning and Development. The purpose of this meeting is to review proposed subdivisions, zoning map amendments, and development plans before they go to Planning Commission, if they're required to go to Planning Commission. This gives local agencies and utility companies that will provide services the opportunity to review plans, discuss and comment about the accessibility of services, and ensure all aspects of the development plans adhere to the zoning and subdivision regulations. This meeting also provides adjoining property owners and concerned citizens in attendance the opportunity to ask technical questions of the applicants or agencies represented before you. We have allowed a combined 40 minutes of time for these comments. Typically, we allow 20, but Ryan Fisher, our director, did grant double the time for this meeting due to the interest. No testimony in favor or against this application will be taken at this meeting, and keep in mind, no decisions, absolutely no decisions are made at this meeting. And as a reminder, only questions in technical nature are taken. So keep in mind this meeting is being live streamed on YouTube, and the recorded meeting will be posted to the Oldham County Fiscal Court Facebook page and the Oldham County Fiscal Court YouTube page. If you need to have a conversation among people around you or on your phone, please leave the courtroom and return when finished. Please check your phone to ensure that it's silenced to reduce interruptions. We have two items on the docket today. The first docket is TRC-25-007, Project Lincoln, and the second is TRC-25-010, Coffee Shop Rezoning. So at this time, we will give the applicant or their representative, we will ask the applicant or the representative to come forward and give a brief overview of the application. Please state your name and make sure you speak directly into the microphone.
Ms. Barge, my name is Hank Grady, and I had asked to speak before the hearing begins so that I can interpose my objection to this proceeding. May I speak and verbalize my objection for this hearing?
We've received your appeal of the application, and our attorney has responded to you to organize the appeals process, and that will be considered at the Board of Adjustments meeting. That will not be heard at this Technical Review Committee meeting because that's not the nature of this meeting.
Ms. Barge, I'm also submitted a letter to you yesterday, which contains in written form my objection to this proceeding. I would like to state that before the proceeding begins, if you will permit me to.
That's not the nature of this meeting. We have received the letter of appeal, and we are processing it, and our attorney has received that, and you've been notified of that.
Will I be able to state my objection later in the proceeding?
If you read that we have no testimony in favor or against an application may be taken at this meeting. So it sounds like you're trying to do something that's in favor or objection to this. That's what it sounds like.
I'm trying to bring to this Technical Review Committee what I believe is a deficiency in the application itself that should render it not ready for review. I'd like to bring that before you get started.
That's not part of this process right now.
You're not letting me proceed?
No, because that's not part of this process, but thank you.
I would just, we would be happy to delay the consideration of this until after the coffee shop, the second item on the agenda. Are they present? I feel bad making them wait for what is looking like a long time for probably a simple case. We would be okay with that if you're okay with letting that less controversial thing
I mean, I understand your concern, but we have this, in this order right now, and we have so many people here for this first item, I think it might just be easier. I understand you're trying to be helpful.
I just wanted to be accommodating to the other applicant because they're going to sit through a lot to get to what is probably not a controversial thing.
Yeah. Well, I just want to maintain the order that we established. Thanks.
Okay, well, with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Members of the committee, my name is Cliff Ashburner. I'm a lawyer with Dinsmore & Scholl. I'm here on behalf of... Sure. My name is Cliff Ashburner. I'm an attorney with Dinsmore & Scholl. I'm here on behalf of Western Hospitality Partners. We have some slides we'd like to show you that deal with technical aspects of the proposal that include site selection, other due diligence that has occurred on the site. We have, in addition to, pardon? Oh, sorry. Address is 101 South 5th Street, Suite 2500, Louisville 40202. I have with me today several people who will be speaking again about technical aspects of the application. Derek Triplett and Eric Sen from Land Design and Development. Andrew Craig from ARUP. They are an engineering firm that is involved in the design and construction of data centers, and they are here to explain a little bit about the buildings and their operation. Diane Zimmerman. Diane Zimmerman is a traffic engineer who will testify about her traffic study that I think has probably been reviewed as part of this process. Unfortunately, we have one member of the team who's not available. That is RES, who conducted the environmental study on the property. We do have a slide that touches on the findings. I believe those have been submitted already. But Jim Urban, who is here, has reviewed those studies and should be available to answer questions as needed. Okay? So what we are talking about is a data center. It's on North 53. This is a well-known property and a well-known application at this point. One thing I will point out, unlike many conditional use permits, we have already had 2 separate community meetings. We have constructed a website and posted information on that website, so the amount of public outreach that has occurred already has been significant, as you can probably tell by the sea of red behind me. One thing that I want to start with, why here, and what about this site makes this an appropriate site when it comes to the construction of a data center. Data center site selection really comes down to 4 things. So access to a significant amount of power and the transmission lines that carry that power, access to fiber infrastructure, water, and then obviously access to the site itself. As you can see in this slide, the power lines run right through the subject property. These are the highest voltage power lines that are on the LG&E system. They take power straight from the power plant. And then obviously as they get out into the community, they're stepped down. They would be stepped down as part of this application as well on the site. Fiber is available nearby, water is available nearby, and obviously Highway 53, being a state road, provides access to the site. These are 2 pieces of the environmental report that was previously submitted. Two site reconnaissance studies were done by RES. One deals with waterways, their presence and classification on the site. These are not formal delineations. Those will come later when we get to a final plan. And so these show areas where ephemeral streams are, wetlands are, perennial streams are. On the right-hand side, this is a conclusion of one of the studies that dealt with the location of habitat on the subject property. And this additional due diligence that was done led to the site design that is before you today. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Derek Triplett and Eric Sen to talk through that plan, how they came up with the plan, and then obviously some of its key features. And then we'll turn it over to Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you, Cliff. My name is Derek Triplett with Land Design and Development, 503 Washburn Avenue, Louisville, Kentucky, 40222. So to get into the big picture approach on this project, just to hit some of the key data points, the property is 267 acres, of which 143 acres of the subject site are subject to this conditional use permit request. As far as the general layout and organization of elements on this site, we've placed the proposed buildings on the ridge tops, to work with the existing topography to the fullest extent possible, and also locating the buildings more centrally into the site, which provides some additional distance from the perimeters. The nearest portion of the site, of the development site to property lines, is located up here. The edge of pavement is 100 linear feet from that property line, and the proposed buildings are 160 feet. Just to also point out that this is a 200 scale plan, and so some of these spatial relations and scale of this can be a little bit difficult to digest. And so piggybacking off of that point, we had put together the proposed exhibit showing the proximity of these proposed elements to the nearest homes in the area. And this is also available on the website that Cliff had mentioned. The closest point is on the northeastern side, where we're at 837 feet away from the nearest property line. And also worth pointing out here is the distance from Kentucky 53. It's a significant distance away within the 800-foot range. So this is just a color rendering of that same plan. It just it's easier to read a colored plan than looking at a black and white plan. And one of the things that is certainly worth pointing out is the amount of green space that's being left with the proposal. And so, thank you. And so, as I mentioned, the conditional use permit is 143 acres of the site. Within that 143 acres, we have about 65 proposed acres of impervious surface, which leaves 200 acres of green space, which is typical as what you would see compared to a standard subdivision plan that you would see come through, is about a 25% ratio of impervious surface to green space. So just to sort of bring that back into a comparable situation from an impervious surface standpoint. Also represented on this plan is the proposed tree canopy, mature tree canopy to be preserved. At this level of detail, we take a conservative approach to the tree canopy preservation area. We don't want to overpromise at this without having the full extent of site disturbance, but we feel comfortable, like I said, from a conservative standpoint, to the tree canopy preservation represented on this plan. And I've got another slide here and I had mentioned this property line previously, where this is the closest to the proposed development. And without significant mature trees in this area to be preserved, we are proposing some enhanced screening in this area in the form of berming and dense evergreen plantings as a screening measurement. And so I am going to go back one slide and introduce Eric Sin. He's our principal and chief engineer at LD&D. He's going to talk about the drainage and stormwater mitigation. Thank you.
I'm Eric Sin, professional engineer in land design development, 503 Washburn Avenue, Louisville, 40222. As Derek mentioned, this site currently drains to, where's my car go? To Harrods Creek to the north, and then Ash Run to the south. Currently, as the site sits, the majority of this site, there's a ridge line coming through here. So the majority of the site does drain to Ash Run. So in order to mitigate that, we are proposing to take most of our drainage to what these four detention basins that you're seeing. There is one here, 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 and here. So most of those are located on the south side of the development. We do have significant room that if we need to enlarge those or make those larger to be able to overcompensate, over-detain for maybe, say, 10 to 20%, I think we have capabilities to do that. And what these basins will do is they will actually take our post-developed flow rates and throttle them down to the pre-developed flow rates. And as mentioned, I think we have a little capability to be able to over-detain. So I think we'd be able to get those 100-year flow events down even further than what they are today. And as Derek mentioned, the site, what we're proposing is 75% pervious. So what that is, that would relate to this site being fully developed with single-family homes, large lot single-family homes. So that amount of runoff, the runoff volume will be similar to that. So it's not as significant as somebody would think. So it'd be a lot less. It'd be more like a single-family subdivision. In regards to water quality, we will work with Jim Silliman's department to make sure we meet the Oldham County water quality requirements, whether that is within each of those basins or prior to the basins. And then I also want to also mention that, can't really see it here, but these are where the power lines are. So we have provided access to the substation close to the power lines for easy access. So there's not a lot of vehicular traffic, outside vehicular traffic going through the site. And I think with that, I'll turn it over to Andrew.
So my name is Andrew Craig. I work for Arup. I'm going to go over some of the
Can you give your address, please?
sure, it's
The business address.
Water Street in New York is my company.
We need your business address.
Yeah, it's 33 Water Street in
Okay.
New York. Yeah.
New York, New York?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm just going to go over some of the technical specifics of the data center buildings. Sure. Can you hear me better now? Okay. So a data center is basically a collection of servers connected to the internet for transfer of digital information. They form the backbone of the digital infrastructure of the country. So things like the internet function using data centers as it's where the data lives and where information passes through. Typically, they're composed of servers and support systems. So we bring power and cooling to the server equipment. The power's conditioned and there's equipment so that it is redundant in the case of any interruptions from the utility. And the cooling is there to extract heat from the IT equipment. Sure. Hyperscale, this is a hyperscale data center. So that's just a term for the scale of the data center. It's the largest type of data center that are built. So the cooling system for this data center is a closed loop cooling system. What that means is, and this is the typical style that is being built right now. What that means is the IT equipment will generate heat. There's a water system that transports the heat to air-cooled chillers that are outside the building, and then those air-cooled chillers will reject the heat into the atmosphere. The cooling system, the chilled water cooling system, does not require continuous makeup of water or drainage of water. It's closed loop. It doesn't it doesn't dump into the sewer system or require continuous makeup from the water system. And then the air-cooled chillers, they just reject heat through conduction into the atmosphere. The power system, there will be generators to provide backup power. Each generator, it will be around about 2 to 4 megawatts. And there's several generators per building. These generators will typically only be ran for about 4 hours a year at full load for testing. And then potentially monthly or quarterly, they may be tested to make sure that they start up and that the batteries that start up the generators are functioning properly. They would run if there was a power outage from the utility. So the systems that we put on site generally for power distribution generally have redundancy. So we'll have additional substations and transformers. So if there's a failure of any equipment at the site, it shouldn't cause generators to start up. It's just if the utility distribution at a very high level, so it would be like a regional outage, would cause the generators to start without it being a testing event. Diesel storage. So what we're presenting right now would be belly tank storage for the generators. So each generator would have its own storage. It would be maybe about 10,000 gallons for each generator. The storage would be in double wall belly tanks with leak detection. So if there was any compromising of the storage of one of the generators, it would leak into a secondary storage containment, so there wouldn't be any leakage into the environment. And then any fuel oil that's delivered to the site, there would be spill containment plans per EPA, and they would be, filed to show how the fuel is delivered without there being any ways that any leaks would get outside of any secondary storage. So environmental assessment. So an environmental assessment has been conducted for the data center. Typically those are required, and there's one performed for the site, and then there's another one that gets performed for any airborne contamination. Noise attenuation, so just touching on this for the data center. The generators and chillers, they do generate noise. There are several mitigation methods for mitigating the noise so that it doesn't impact the property line or any neighbors to the site. So the generators will be in acoustic enclosures. The acoustic enclosures can, bring the generators down to fairly quiet sound levels, and the air-cooled chillers can be acoustically treated, and there can be walls put around them to limit any acoustic issues from them. Power consumption. So there's just a little description of how the power works at the site. We get power from the utility steps it down at their substation, then we step it down further to a lower voltage, then we have generators and UPSs that are used. So UPS is an uninterruptible power system, are used to as backup power, and then that gets delivered to the IT load inside the facility. Power outages. So a local power outage, often power outages are caused after the distribution network from the utility, where it's stepped down to a lower voltage for like local residential use. If we're not in part of that system, we get our power from a further upstream where there are high voltage distribution lines that are very rarely affected by outages. And then the rates for residential consumers are typically decoupled from the data center usage. It's a different rate system that we're typically using. You want to have the traffic study? Okay, thank you.
Hello, Diane Zimmerman with Diane B. Zimmerman Traffic Engineering LLC at 12803 High Meadows Pike, Prospect, Kentucky 40059. I did prepare a traffic impact study of the site using the ITE trip generation data for data centers. And I will remind everyone that the purpose of a traffic impact study is to evaluate the conditions at the entrance to determine what improvements might be required at the entrance to accommodate the traffic at the site. The results of the study are that the entrance itself will operate at level service B, and the southbound left turn movement would operate at level service A. The volumes at the entrance do not satisfy the warrants for left or right turn lanes at the entrance, and because the level of service is better than C, no mitigation is required by Oldham County for roadway capacity.
So you have already had our plans. We did delay this meeting 1 month, so I think you've had the plans for a while. I hope we look forward to receiving your comments and moving on to the next meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next step is agency comments. I'm going to start with the planning and development comments. The following comments are applied to the Oldham County Planning and Development review of the plans dated 2025/10/12 for Project Lincoln submitted for TRC review. Number 1, correct the date of preparation. It is listed as 2025/10/12, which would indicate October 12th, 2025, which has not occurred yet. 2, note the proposed building lines showing the distance setback from the street right-of-way. 3, indicate a general description of the type and size of trees and areas of substantial trees. 4, note the lakes, ponds, marshes, wetlands, and soil types. Are there any areas of significant sinkholes? 5, note which features remain and which are to be removed. Will the antenna tower be removed? A cemetery preservation plan should indicate who will assume ownership and maintenance of the cemetery, and a 5-foot setback should be maintained around the cemetery. 6, include notes in the notes section what variance will be requested. 7, the symbol for storm water flow is indicated in the notes section, but storm water flow is not shown on the plan. 8, update the following addresses for adjoining property owners. For 2600 Ridgewood Road address to the north, please confirm all portions of the content are legible. For 1410 Yeager Lane address to the east, please correct the ownership to David and Jerry Oberg. For the 3600 Alexander Drive address to the east, please correct the last name to Ringswald. It's listed as Ringswalk. For 2721 Thompson Road address, please confirm all portions of the content are legible. 9, indicate the provisions for screening, buffering, and landscaping, especially in the areas closest to the residentially used properties. This can include a combination of screening, buffering, or berms. Indicate the acreage in right-of-way as number 10. 11, correct the proposed zoning to AG1 and CO1. It's listed as C1. 12, a landscaping and lighting plan will be required before site plan approval, adhering to Division 300 and 310 of the Oldham County zoning ordinance. 13, indicate the parking spaces required adhering to Division 280-025 of the Oldham County Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance. Please note that calculation on the plans and indicate whether any waivers will be required for minimum or maximum parking requirements. 14, please clarify the possible fence encroachment noted on the plans. And 15, for interior landscape area, ILA provided the calculation should be 10 square feet for every 100 square feet of vehicular use landscape area. If you have any questions, you can contact our office, and that's from Ryan Fisher. Next, we have from Russ Rose at the Oldham County Water District. I am not available for TRC. I've included my comments below. Keep in mind, everyone, we do our best efforts at making people attend or requesting that they attend this meeting. They are not required to attend the meetings, even though we highly recommend they do. The subject property lies within the service area of OCWD, Oldham County Water District. No construction plans have been submitted for review at this time. Water service must be made available as required by the Kentucky Public Service Commission, contingent upon the developer installing any necessary infrastructure both within and or outside the development site in accordance with OCWD specifications and regulatory agencies. So next is from Jason Richardson at KYTC, or Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. Our comments are as follows. Number one, the calculations will be required for any runoff deemed necessary to be taken to state right-of-way. Proposals to alter significantly increase a drainage area or runoff factors, or to change in any way the performance of an existing drainage structure shall be accompanied by a complete drainage study and hydrologic analysis upstream and downstream based on 25-year and 100-year storms. This analysis should include a comparison of existing and proposed conditions. Requests to alter drainage on a right-of-way shall result in conditions that are equal to or better than the existing draining. 2, there shall be no commercial signs in the right-of-way. 3, there shall be no landscaping in the right-of-way without an encroachment permit. Tree species planted in the right-of-way must conform to District 5 list of approved trees. 4, site lighting shall not shine in the sight of drivers. If it does, it should be re-aimed, shielded, or turned off. 5, there shall be no parking nor any portion of the parking lot on a state right-of-way. 6, all drainage structures within state right-of-way shall be state design. 7, design of access to state highway must comply with KYTC typical and/or standard drawings. Entrance width must be limited to 24 minimum, 30 and 36 feet maximum, with 35 feet minimum corner radii. Entrance locations are subject to meet required site distance. 8, a traffic impact study will be required, which has been completed. 9, KYTC is okay with the concept on the plan with the exception of the comments in this review. This is just a preliminary okay. KYTC will review again if or when construction plans are submitted and reserve the right to change or qualify an approval when construction plans are received. So next is from Greg Smith from the police department, police chief. He apologized for not being at the meeting. And he said, my concerns would be traffic and security. It may be too early to conduct a traffic study, but given the comments already from the community, it would probably be needed, which it's already been done. I would also be interested in the security, although I would not expect the specifics to be made public knowledge. Yeah, so. And then. We have one more. So LG&E refused to send a representative today, even through our mini request. So they, again, like I said, we cannot force people to be here. So this is their letter. Members of the Oldham County Technical Review Committee at Louisville Gas and Electric Company were privileged to serve as the energy provider of more than 25,000 electric and natural gas customers in Oldham County and look forward to serving the proposed Project Lincoln Data Center. LG&E owns and operates existing infrastructure, including 345 kilowatt transmission lines located on the property that would serve the proposed site. The Kentucky Public Service Commission regulates electric utilities in Kentucky as a regulated utility. LG&E has an obligation to provide all customers with safe, reliable service and to serve new economic development system load growth. When a new project is proposed that will add a new electric service or expand existing electric service, we perform extensive studies, thoroughly evaluate the effects of the new load. We use these studies to help ensure we make any necessary system enhancements to continue providing safe, reliable service for all customers. In addition, we want to provide more explanation about our role as energy provider when new developments are proposed, as well as address several questions that have been raised as relates to this project. We have an obligation to ensure energy rates are fair, just, and reasonable for all customers, which includes seeking to have individual customers be responsible for the cost costs of work or facilities that serve them only them. LG&E is therefore committed to ensuring that all customers, including data centers, pay for their fair share of utility costs. We have an all of the above approach to our generation fleet that's flexible and one of the most reliable in the nation. From an energy perspective, data centers are attractive because that increase in load generally comes in phases, allowing utilities to plan accordingly from a generation standpoint. Data centers provide a consistent load with little ramp up or ramp down due to production schedules or changes. They are also known to be extremely efficient users of the electric system and are good for system planning and operation. Oftentimes, data centers include backup power sources in their operations to ensure systems can continue to run in the event of a major power outage. Other customers, such as hospitals, emergency services, major manufacturing plants, and airports, have similar backup power systems as part of their operations for the very same reason. While we don't know what backup source this particular project may use, LG&E will not require that they use generator power for any reason. We thank you for the opportunity to submit these comments. We hope this information provides a clearer picture of our role and considerations we take into account as the local energy provider. Our company personnel are available to help address any additional questions you may have about our role during this process. And I can't read this guy's signature, but it's John Bevington, Senior Director, Business and Economic Development, and we'll make sure to provide the email addresses on our website so you can reach out to LG&E directly, since they're not here, so you can't ask them questions. So that concludes the letters I received, and we'll go to Matt Toller, GIS Manager, next.
Just based on the scale of this project, we'll probably have to just sit down with like the fire department and first responders. We'll probably have to come up with a road name for this. I don't want to use a 53 address. And we can, address every building, the substations, because I don't really know, where or what could possibly come up. But the more, addressing that we have, or at least some kind of signage everywhere, will be helpful for first responders. I'm sure Keith will have other comments about what's happening on the site.
Okay, Jim Silliman, County Engineer.
So based on an initial review of just the USGS online mapping, there's significantly fewer blue line streams or jurisdictional waters potentially than what the RES study you presented showed. So be nice to have that final report to review. Ultimately, we understand that there are blue line streams in the vicinity, and any impact to those from construction would require appropriate permitting from the Kentucky Division of Water and Army Corps of Engineers, whether it's a 401 or 404 permits. Additionally, the preliminary plan really doesn't show any of the horizontal line work encroaching in the 1% flood hazard area. However, similarly, any impact to that 1% flood hazard area would require permitting from the Kentucky Division of Water and my office for a local floodplain permit. It did look like the slide you showed had some encroachment into the Ash Run floodplain, so we just need to confirm that. Obviously, the land disturbance area will be greater than 1 acre, so you'll be required to get a stormwater quality management and erosion control permit from my office, as well as the Kentucky Division of Water land disturbance KYR10 permit. Anna mentioned the comments from Jason Richardson. Obviously, since this encroaches on a state road, the encroachment permit would be required from Jason and his team. Back to the stormwater, and Jason mentioned addressing the 25 and 100-year storm. As you're aware, you've done plenty of business for other developments in Oldham County. Our ordinance requires the 2 and 10-year storm also to be included in the analysis for the proposed stormwater detention, as well as our current water quality requirements. Based on a review of Kentucky Geologic Service mapping online, there are numerous identified sinkholes, either by LIDAR or topography, throughout the property. I would really just want to work with you to understand how you plan on effective detention, where there might be sinkholes. From a maintenance standpoint, Oldham County typically requires that no new trees be permitted within those detention areas. And similarly, that the basin outlets are at least 15 feet from property line. Doesn't look like that'll be a problem. And similarly, that any discharges from those basins be aligned with the flow, so we're not releasing perpendicular flow into a stream and causing any challenges there. You're aware the detention basin and drainage facilities will be required to be put in a easement and recorded with the county clerk, and along with that, you'll record a stormwater quality maintenance agreement. It's not apparent from the drawing, but in accordance with Oldham County subdivision regulations, the curbs are required for the traffic areas, and typically that's for to ensure that the stormwater from those impervious areas are captured and sent to the detention basins properly. There appear to be some relatively steep slopes within the project site, so we would request that the any retaining walls and fall protection for those walls that's included in this design be included with the construction plans submitted for the stormwater permit for our information. I mean, ultimately, that's going to be reviewed by the state and their building permit team, though. With regard to the traffic study Diane referenced, and she and I spoke a little bit earlier, if I just run the area of the buildings through the ITE web-based trip generator, we get 216 a.m. and 184 p.m. peak hour trips, but we discussed the fact that it's interesting because the ITE upper limit for data center is significantly less than the size of this one. I don't think they've had an opportunity to include this scale of data center in their data. So you have submitted a traffic impact study, and ultimately that's to be reviewed and approved by the transportation cabinet, since this is their encroaching on their right-of-way or connecting to their right-of-way. But I think there should be discussion with the cabinet regarding what those actual trip generation numbers should be, whether you utilize what's directly in the web-based portal, whether we try and have a better understanding of what trips you're actually generating, understanding you'll know what your first, second, third shifts are, what people you're actually bringing to it. And they may also want to know if there's a significant amount of traffic. You know, Cliff and I think we discussed this beforehand. Typically, developments look at the built-out traffic, but if there is a significant impact from the construction itself over a long period of time, we just need to know that KYTC has looked at that, or so further scoping to make sure that's finalized is important. You mentioned on the preliminary plan, I had just had a mention or a note of septic systems, and I was wondering how that would be placed just with reference to those sinkholes I mentioned earlier. Ultimately, that's going to be the purview of Charlie Ward with the health department, so I'll stay in my lane. But I did notice on a slide you had earlier, you actually had a proposed location. And lastly, for me, there's been a lot of discussion about the cooling systems and with regard to the water quality requirements for the county and stormwater management. You mentioned the closed loop system. I think we just need to make sure we understand that fully. I think of a closed loop system, even maybe the transmission of your car, and that has to get maintained occasionally. So is there any maintenance required for this closed loop system? And if so, is it taken off site? We just need to understand where that ultimately goes. That's all.
Next, Charlie Ward from the Health Department.
Okay, everyone can hear me okay? All right, so I'm gonna read my letter that I provided to the applicant and to planning and zoning buildings. So just bear with me for a second and then I'll go over everything that entailed, okay? So a preliminary soils evaluation was conducted on March 11th, 2025. Findings indicated the soil in this area was mostly considered provisionally suitable. Just remember that word, provisionally suitable. for conventional subsurfing discharge septic systems. Some areas were more adequate with soil depth than conventional lateral field installation, with soil types consisting mainly of silty loam to clay and blocky to massive structure. Other areas had shallow restrictive horizons in the presence of modeling, which will determine installation depth of lateral fields. The preliminary evaluation was conducted by myself and the Oldham County Health Department. This evaluation does not constitute final approval for any specific location or installation of an on-site sewage disposal septic system. There will need to be a reevaluation of the property once buildings, utilities, impervious surfaces, and other setback distances structures are clearly marked, and a specific soil site evaluation performed to determine the sewage disposal septic system prior to construction. So, can I get on that screen?
Jake, Charlie is going to pull something up on the projector. If you can put that up for everyone. Thanks.
Just reference 53, but I'm coming back. So everyone noticed, but what I noticed is this map does not match the map that was put up on the screen earlier. The buildings, numbers changed. The locations of them have changed. Now, right. That's minor. It is important. I am going back out there again. I'll be spending a whole nother day to go back there. So just to explain, the areas in yellow are where test holes were dug and notes that were taken. On the back of the sheet is all of the notes as far as depths, modeling, not exact insulation depths, because again, this was a very broad brushstroke site evaluation. This was just, where do you think you're not going to be, so where can I dig test holes where things aren't? Now, yes, there is topography. There are sinkholes that have 70-foot setback distances. So if there is a sinkhole, you have to go 70 feet all around the sinkhole to not have a lateral field in that proximity of the area. So again, when we did this, it was just field. We were kind of going off, well, this is topography, this is what it looks like. We're relative in the right area, but by no means is this is not permanent. We're going to have to go back out there once everything is marked out onto the ground, knowing where and what is going to be, because I got to put my puzzle piece where there can't be a puzzle piece already. I have to be very proactive in this approach, not reactive, because we put all these large buildings and scale, and all of a sudden, I don't have any space to put in a lateral field. So I am first and last in most building projects, and if any of you all have ever worked with me for like residential housings and site evaluations, same situation, just different approach, okay? Where I'm usually first and last on the property, where I'm the first person that comes out as far as inspectors wise that goes, determine where the septic system will be installed, and then I come back to a final inspection once that system is installed before it's completely covered and finalized. Now with this, I have some areas that are in mind that can work with it, but I'm going to need more information at some point. And another thing is, this will be sized based upon number of employees per days per hours. So once we can get a tighter number and to know exactly what's coming into the establishment, how many people are going to be there, that theoretical number becomes a finite number. So I can still gather some information to do, but I will be going back out there probably several more times to determine what an exact septic system location would be. Now, there will probably be several different satellite locations where not every building will be connected together to one large, enormous lateral field. If they were, you could do that. That would go over the local health department to Frankfurt, being that it's kind of like a cluster type system, cluster being multiple buildings to a primary system, where if we had each individual building have its own individual septic tank and lateral field, that would be for a specific location in the general area of each one of those buildings and such. Beyond that, as far as the impact with these things, it is going to generate, a certain amount of groundwater here, because we're turning effluent wastewater back into groundwater using Mother Nature and Earth as our biomedia and filter to do that. So I'm going to need to get some real hammered down numbers, employees, shifts, day. Because right now I'm still at like 220 over 3 shifts per day, but days per weeks per month, all that kind of fun stuff. So I have been there. And we'll be back there probably several more times with more information on the property to know where and what I can do and what applicable areas that will be with it. So if going forward, it would probably have to be 4 corners to every building, roads. I mean, anything that's going to be something kind of service that's not going to be able to utilize as green space, I need to know where and what that's going to take up. So I'm not trying to put a lateral field on a parking lot or underneath a building. So I will greatly need a lot more information at a future date and time.
Keith Smith, Fire Department.
First off, our department has not been approached by neither the developer, any of the utilities associated with it, Oldham County Water, LG&E, any of that. There's been zero communication there. Yeah. All I'm seeing is basically what, is presented here today. We had a few questions, a little bit general, as far as, what type of extinguishment systems will we be looking at on this property? I know that there's, some of it that seems like it may be, a clean agent type of a extinguishing system, or it may all well be a wet, totally wet, or a wet, dry system in different areas. I have no idea what to expect there. And then given the amount of water, of course, I didn't know that this was closed looped until you mentioned about that. But as far as a daily need for the chillers, I assume chillers need water running through them. No? I was just curious about them.
We can either do the answer right now or the answer at the end.
Yeah, I can do that at the end. The only reason I ask about what would the daily needs as far as gallons per day of water needed for that, and would it impact the fire department in any way during a certain time of day should we have to be there and hook to a hydrant and experience reduced flows there? Again, have no idea about the extinguishing systems or anything else. Basically about, I think, a couple other questions that we had on our mind is batteries. You mentioned about batteries to start the generators and so forth. I'd like to know, are there any other type of large banks of batteries there for, APCs? What type are they? What would we expect as a fire department there? And then I had something else. Wait a minute. The water, that there was something else that went through my mind there. I guess that's all really for right now. Yes, sir.
Okay, next, Scott Treacy from LaGrange Utilities. You might be here for that. I can't remember if you're here for this one and the next one or just the next one.
No, I'm actually here for the next agenda items. That is out of our service area, this project here.
That's what I figured. I just want to double check while you're here. Okay, so that concludes the public comments. I mean, not the public comments. Sorry about that. The agency comments. Haven't gotten to the public comment stage yet. So I'm going to give you these copies. I just put in a folder this time. So in here, I've also included some public questions that were submitted. I don't know if you'll agree to this, but we request that you'll respond to these, not either on the website or your website, or if this continues through the process where it's heard as a conditional use permit or heard any other mechanism at a hearing, if you'll address those questions there. A lot of those questions are specifically you, if they're not answered today, because there's quite a few questions that I believe the public would like answered. So those, a lot of those will probably be answered, today. But before we get to public comment, I'm not sure if you'd like to address any of the questions today that the agencies provided, or if you'd like to respond at a later time.
So it's Andrew Craig again. I just want to address the questions.
Make sure you speak into the mic.
About the fire suppression system. So it would be a pre-action system for the majority of the building. So that's if a double interlock is allowed, we do a double interlock, single interlock if that's, a requirement. There may be a mist system for the generators based on the NFPA requirements for fuel oil storage. So typically we try to space the fuel oil out enough so that a mist system isn't required. But if it's dense enough, then it would be a mist system. Sometimes we'll put a clean agent system in the UPS, but it'll probably just be a pre-action system again for this. The water consumption for the chillers, we're proposing air-cooled chillers, which don't have a continuous makeup of water. Okay. The only water consumption would be for the initial fill, and if there was any work done in the system, if it needed any drain down of a section of piping and refilling. So the water consumption would be for like potable water for the occupants, and then fire water, and we just use the pressure from the local system.
Okay. All right.
So does that answer your questions, or did you have further?
No, it was just, typically you're going to be dealing with the state on a whole big bunch of that, not here locally anyway, on the fire suppression and everything. But, we generally place hydrants around the businesses, so we would need to be involved in that portion of it as well.
There would be hydrants around the site, and then there would be fire truck access for the buildings. So
that's what I was. That was one of my other questions. I forgot what it was. Is what type of access will the fire department have? I assume this is a 24/7 type of an operation. Personnel there at 24/7. If it's anywhere in my fire protection district, then LaGrange Fire Department is going to provide protection for it. But I'd just like to know about our access in the event of emergency. I know security is typically very tight around these developments like this. I want to find out, how are we restricted in access to them and so forth.
Yeah, sure. I mean, maybe we could answer the actual access to the site later. What I was talking more about was around the buildings, so that there's fire truck access to the buildings.
Right.
But yeah, I'm not sure if that's being addressed in any of the actual access. Yeah, it would be probably addressed by security later on, and we'd coordinate with the department so that there was provisions for access. But
what is the length of the average building from where you do have access, length and width approximately?
Do you have a
Yeah, no problem. Okay.
Just getting their scale out.
Yes. Yeah, I can't read those either. Both, actually. In concern about the volume of hose that we carry on a truck, and whether we have to do different types of lays and orientations with that. And also, one other thing, if I could ask as well, I've heard, don't know where I heard it again because I haven't had communication with anybody, but what would be the average height? I've heard something about a possible 75 foot. Is that for the building itself, or maybe for the chiller part, or can you give me a rough idea what it might be, a height of these buildings?
Do you want to speak to that?
Mr. Smith, the first on the length and width, they're 750 feet long by 200 feet wide.
Okay, great.
Okay. They are proposed at 75 feet. Typically, the floor to floor, you'd have 2 stories worth of kind of server space. Okay. They're about 22 feet, 25 feet floor to floor. The additional height is made up of equipment and other things that are on top that are surrounded by that noise attenuating material.
Okay. So it's basically a two-story building. It's just you have higher
Yeah.
widths on floors or
Yeah.
heights on the floors. Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Okay, and then Jim Silliman, our county engineer, had another question.
Yeah, thank you. The discussion of fire suppression reminded me one other question that I skipped in my letter that you've got a copy of. But with regard to the fire suppression and just understanding as it's being designed, how it could affect the 100-year storm in the detention basins. We have at another site in the county that was actually designed because of its use to accommodate both the water that comes off a fire suppression system as well as the 100-year storm. I know, Eric, you mentioned potential over detention for these basins, so we just need to have that discussion and understand again the volume of water or whatever material is being used for that fire suppression. Thank you.
Are there any other questions that they asked that you want to address at this time? I'm not sure there are, but.
The only thing I would answer again for you, Mr. Smith, is that you mentioned something about water quantity and the impact on flows. You know, the Oldham County zoning ordinance does have in it a standard for commercial buildings at 750 gallons per minute with a residual pressure amount. You know, we would have to demonstrate compliance with that, which I think would resolve your flow comment.
Yeah, yes, it should. I just didn't, again, not knowing, you know, I've heard massive amounts of water that would be needed for this facility, and I didn't know if there was a specific operation during a time of day where we might not get those volume amounts, and it was a general question.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I have this for you. These are just those additional comments that were submitted in the last 24 hours. Oh, you got these ones. Okay, cool. Maybe I just made extra copies. Okay, so now we're going to go into the public comment period. Keep in mind, Director Fisher doubled the amount of time, and this is a collective time. So please keep in mind that others have questions, and try not to be repetitive. We're going to try to keep this as a progressive process and try to prioritize your questions and ask questions of either the applicant or the committee that's here. So if you have any questions for LG&E or Oldham County Water who are not here, you can direct those to them at a later time. And again, it's 40 minutes. It needs to be technical in nature. So I may remind you if it's not technical or that question's already been addressed, I may politely remind you. And keep in mind when you come up here, say your name and your address and speak into the mic so that everyone in this room and on YouTube can hear you speak. Thank you.
My name is Hank Grady, 137 North Main Street, Versailles, Kentucky. We represent Nathan Oberg and David Oberg, Oldham County landowners, farmers, and residents. And we represent We Are Oldham County LLC. We have submitted comments to you. Hopefully the comments are available to you. And we have also appealed the conditional use permit, and that is scheduled to be heard before the Board of Adjustments next month. I'm here to raise what I believe is an objection to this proceeding. I attempted to raise it before we began, but this hyperscale data center is a use that is not expressly authorized in the conditional uses of Oldham County, nor is it authorized and discussed anywhere in the comprehensive plans or the zoning ordinance.
So anything towards the use we're not going to discuss today because that is an appeal process that y'all submitted. And I talked to the attorney for that case and he said that we'll continue to proceed with TRC today and we will consider the appeal regarding the use of whether private utility is deemed appropriate or not. As the appeals that have been submitted, those are going to be considered to the Board of Adjustments next month, like you just said.
but I do want to identify the areas where we are objecting. If I could turn the overhead on, I would like to show this statute to this TRC.
I believe do you have like a question that's technical in nature? Because that's what's going to be considered.
Yes,
Okay.
I have questions.
Okay.
I'm trying to get
Okay,
to the
okay.
questions. The statute that governs the board requires uses that are specifically named in the zoning regulations. This data center is nowhere named in the zoning regulations. So it is improper for this applicant to come before you seeking a conditional use for this land use. Now, you may say, well, they're claiming it is a private utility. If you look at my letter, we discussed that as well. The private utility conditional use in Oldham County has never been authorized. It is a reserved use. So if you were asked to consider a private utility, that use is premature. Your ordinance does not allow that. If you're asked to consider a data center, that is also premature. That's nowhere in the ordinance. Finally, we mentioned in our letter the section of the zoning ordinance that prohibits in the agriculture and conservation zones more than one principal building per lot. This application on its face violates the prohibition to one principal structure per lot. I want to call attention to the plat, which has on it public utility. We believe that is a deficiency, and the applicant should withdraw it and remove that, because you are not allowed, the Board of Adjustments is not allowed to consider conditional uses. My questions are, how many principal structures are allowed in the AG zoning? How many principal structures is this applicant proposing? Where is the proposed hyperscale data center provided for in the community's comprehensive plan? Where is the proposed hyperscale data center use specifically described in the zoning ordinance? Will the proposed data center generate, transmit, or distribute electricity, gas, steam, or communications? That is what is required for a utility. This does none of that. Will the proposed data center collect and treat sewage and solid waste? That's what a utility does. This does not. Will the proposed data center provide mass transportation? That's what your ordinance says a utility does. This facility, we believe, does not. Under the planning staff's interpretation, which is allowing this to go forward, are there any parcels of land in Oldham County that are prohibited from constructing a hyperscale data center? Those are our questions. Thank you. We would ask that you recommend this applicant withdraw his application and start over.
Okay. You're using up, just as a reminder, the clock is ticking, just as a reminder. Okay, so questions. Strobo Barkley also submitted the same exact questions. So question 2 and 3 regarding comprehensive plan and zoning ordinance, those will be addressed at the Board of Adjustments meeting. And 4 through 7 are applicant questions. And then 8 is under the planning staff's interpretation, are there any parcels of land in the Oldham County that are prohibited from constructing a hyperscale data center? Well, at this time, we can't really comment on that because it's under the appeal process. So private utility, once that's determined, we'll be able to decide that further. Does the applicant want to answer questions 4 through 7? Or do y'all want to, this is how the process works if you've, in our meetings, or if y'all would rather come up and keep answering, but the clock does continue.
Does our time run while he's deciding whether to answer questions?
Yeah, but we've granted you double the time as normal. So, okay, we'll continue with public comment. Who wants to speak next? Strobo Barkley.
Good morning. Randy Strobo, 730 West Main Street, Louisville, Kentucky, 40202. My law firm represents Nana Lampton. I'm not going to repeat any of those questions, and I think you're correct that we submitted the same questions. I do have some additional questions, though, for I think Mr. Craig, if that's okay. Cliff, can I ask Mr. Craig a few questions? Yeah. I think it's for Mr. Craig. but
Did
for
you state your address? I can't remember.
I did. Yes.
Okay.
I can do it again if you want. 730 West Main Street, Suite 202, Louisville, Kentucky, 40202.
Thanks.
And I'll just say, too, that my client adopts the same arguments that Mr. Grady and his clients adopted. But in addition to the questions that were submitted already, and these, I have a couple additional questions for Mr. Craig based on the testimony that we heard earlier today. If that's okay, Madam Chair, to ask those questions?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
I have some additional questions based on the testimony we heard today.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Craig, if you want to come up here and make it easier. So I'm going to push this towards you when I'm done so people can hear us. So during your testimony earlier, you talked about, when you're talking about the cooling system, you quote said it was a typical style. Do you recall that?
Yeah.
Okay. So is this the cooling system that you're going to be using for this data center?
That's the style that is used for data centers at this time. That's the there have historically been other cooling systems, but the closed loop air cooled chiller is the cooling system that we're proposing to use.
Is that subject to change later?
There may be some other systems on the site that aren't that. That's the main cooling system for the data center. So for cooling the IT equipment, there could be for like the people spaces, there may be a different system. But that's what we're proposing at this time.
So it's your intention to have the cooling system that you proposed earlier today to be the final cooling system for this hyperscale data center?
Yeah, that's what we're proposing.
And you talked a little bit about diesel storage. Is diesel gas, is that a hazardous material?
So at room temperature, diesel is a liquid. In terms of hazardous, you'd probably have to qualify, what standard it's being used to call it hazardous or non-hazardous. I don't have like the material data sheets in front of me, which are probably what you would refer to with that sort of question.
Would you light a match close to it?
So I don't want to get into the chemistry of
I'm sorry, Randy.
diesel storage.
You were
That's
way off.
Address her.
Okay, fine. I'll address you.
I feel like is diesel stored? That is a technical question. And is it hazard? But lighting a match is beyond the probably technical of this committee.
Okay. I'll rephrase.
If you want to make comments, make comments.
I'm rephrasing. I'm asking.
Okay.
I'll rephrase. Is that okay?
Rephrase, please.
Yeah. Is diesel combustible?
I would agree that under
I would keep it
conditions
more
it's combustible,
technical
but
in nature
is
to this
this
project.
Is this a technical question about the
Yeah,
the
and keep
site,
in mind, be
or-
courteous of others who have questions. Yeah, keep in mind, be courteous of others who have questions as well. Okay,
So, Madam Chair, are you requiring him to answer that, or should I move on?
please move on.
Thank you. My next question is about you had testified a little bit about concerns over data center usage and connecting to the grid and concerns about electricity usage on the grid, correct? You talked a little bit about that earlier.
At a very high level, I'm not really sure what the question is specifically getting to.
And are you familiar with the near blackout that occurred in Virginia in April or in the summer of 2024 due to a thunderstorm that caused several data centers to go
This
offline?
is not technical with this project specifically.
Well-
I feel like
well-
this is.
Well, hang on. I'll let them stop then. I'm going to address you.
Okay.
So the reason why I'm asking these questions is because they presented this evidence already. So I think I have the right to question them on that evidence that they presented. You didn't stop them from presenting that evidence.
This is, I mean, this is not
But-
focus on this project in particular and the plans provided today at this project.
But that's what I'm doing. I'm talking about his testimony that he provided earlier. But if you want me to move on, you're the chair.
Yeah, stay focused, please.
So can you answer that question or no?
I would say no. You would need to stay focused on this question.
Okay. That's fair. Okay, thank you, Mr. Craig. I have no other questions. Appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair. No more questions.
Does anyone else have questions?
Running out of time.
My name is Don Erler. I live at 4005 Old Highway 53, LaGrange. You gave Mr. Ashburner a list of questions. Were those the ones that I sent you?
They included the questions that you sent us, yes.
Okay. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to put into the record those questions.
Yes. Here they are. And I'll give you this. Sorry, these are just in the record, and then they can address them at.
Do I
on the
need to
website.
screen them?
No, unless you want any question to be answered like at this moment.
Okay.
Record, yeah, that's good.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Right. So do you have the questions? Are they? Okay.
They're the second set that you sent.
Yeah.
The
Well,
one-
let me give you these questions.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
these are the ones that go in the record.
Yes. I'll give them to Christy so they're officially in the record. Thank you, Dawn. Okay, next person. Oh, well, sorry.
Oh,
Okay,
no.
I didn't realize you're still going.
I'm a
Okay.
long way from done, Anna. The reason I want those in the records is because a technical review of a $6 billion project with 40 minutes for public comment and agencies that are not here and have no information. Thank you, Keith, for saying you've never been contacted at all relative to this activity. By the way, what's the biggest ladder on your trucks?
Technically, we have a ladder, it's 105 feet.
Okay. Just want to make sure you had one that was big enough for these buildings. So we consider these proceedings to be absurd relative to the scope and magnitude of this project. This project is for a $6 billion improvement on a piece of farmland, heavy industrial development. And so consequently, the process itself is flawed because there's not enough time to get the job done here. We're submitting 9 pages of questions that we consider very important, technical in nature, because they need to be answered. We need further technical review unless we can satisfactorily answer these before this process would ever reach the Board of Adjustments. So we want those in your records, and we want all of the parties to look at them. They've been sent to all agencies. We will provide them to all news media so that they can circulate them, make sure that all the people in this community have an opportunity to take a hard look at the project. But this particular project, we started with 40 minutes. We've had a little argument. We're down to 24 minutes. The room is full of people that would like to ask questions of the agencies and especially of the applicant. So I have one question, Cliff, if you'll respond to this. And this is a question for Cliff Ashburner, who represents the applicant in this particular case. Cliff, Has your client ever built or operated a data center?
That's not really
That's not
a technical question. We have developers who do projects for the first time all the time. I don't know if they have or not, but that's not a technical question. You're allowed to disagree, but that's not a technical question.
Yeah, I do disagree, but this is a $6 billion project. Do we have the right party in front of us for technical review? I think that's critical, Anna, because we can ask all the questions in the world of this particular party, but I don't believe they purported to be the developer on the materials that were submitted. Have they ever developed anything before? Do they have any expertise to develop? Are they a developer? I think that's a critical question.
Again, that's not. Again, that's not technical in nature. There are state and federal review processes in addition to our county review processes as well that they will be required to go through. And as a reminder, this is double the amount of time that's typically allowed.
So it's our belief that this is not the right party at technical review. It's already been objected to. We're going to object to it more, because we don't have the right party in front of us. We can't ask technical questions of somebody who is attempting to take a piece of land and get it entitled, who is not going to develop it and not going to operate it. So we need to know whether or not we have the right party in front of us. I think a good question would be, are they going to get it entitled and then flip it to somebody else that nobody knows about?
Again, not technical in nature. Not technical in nature, and you're using up the time with non-technical questions.
Again, we object to the proceeding because we don't have the right party in front of us. You can't do a technical review of a project where you don't have the developer and you don't have the operator.
I mean, even our next project on the docket doesn't have an end user right now. So just keep that in mind. That's pretty common to not have end users.
This particular project, Anna, is not very common.
Well, anyway, that's not a technical. Do you have any technical questions? Because you do actually have some technical questions on here.
I have a lot of technical questions on there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up a few people. I'm going to bring up a number of people that would like to ask some of those technical questions and some other technical questions to do that. But I want to make sure two things are established here at this technical review. Number one is there's not enough time to cover all of the questions that could be asked here for a $6 billion project. Number two is we believe that you don't have the right party in your technical review. They may be the applicant, but they're not the right party to answer any technical questions, unless this gentleman right here, Mr. Craig, is the developer. Are you the developer, Mr. Craig? Or just a consultant?
That's, again, not technical. So can we move on, please,
Anna,
to the technical?
you need to figure it out. So let me bring up some people who have some great questions for you. And 20 minutes is left to consider a $6 billion project. Keep it in mind.
Hello, can you hear me? Jamie Hilligans, Hillegonds, 7925 Oregon Creek Road, Pendleton. Who am I asking my questions to? Is it Cliff? Anybody? Okay. So you show on your side plan that you have a couple of areas of spill containment, and we've talked about that in the open houses as well. Is that spill containment for stormwater only? Or is that spill containment also for all of your wastewater, fire water containment?
The primary use of those detention basins for stormwater, but as Jim Stillman requested, we're going to take into account the sprinkler flow as well.
When looking at your site plan, I noticed there were a few details that I was unable to find. So one was your spill containment specifically for your fire water containment, any other waste, sprinkler water, et cetera. Also missing in the site plan was the parking area. Do you also have an updated site plan that includes your outdoor equipment, such as specifics around the generators, generator locations and dimensions, your cooling tower locations, if you have battery storage, your battery storage locations and sizes, your fire suppression infrastructure, which is certainly very critical for the site, such as your fire water holding tanks, fire hydrants, pump houses, et cetera, which I would think for a site of this level of complexity with the amount of diesel fuel that you will have on site, you should be requiring a pretty extensive fire suppression system on site. Will you also provide an updated site plan that includes other buildings and infrastructure that are required for a site of this level of complexity? Can you also provide an updated site plan that includes your fuel storage, infrastructure, tanks, locations, dimensions? Can you also provide an updated site plan that includes your infrastructure and storage tanks and locations for capturing your processed wastewater? And if you intend to include a pre-treatment for that wastewater, and then of course the location for the septic system, which I think might be included in the updated site plan we saw today. In my experience working in construction and engineering, these are pretty typical things that would be on a very basic site layout, particularly one that is supposed to be the largest investment in construction development in the history of the state of Kentucky. You mentioned diesel power backup, and you provided some information. We went through it really quickly, so I didn't get all of the information written down, but here's my basic question for you. So in the event that we have a complete power outage, what is the amount of fuel that will be burned in 24 hours when 100% of your generators are operating, powering a 600 megawatt site? Does anybody want to answer that right now?
And if not, could these questions be answered like on your website on a Q&A thing? Okay, cool, thanks.
And the reason that this question is so critical, and the WHP team did touch on it very briefly, is typically these sites, they require not just 24 hours of backup generation. They're going to require multiple days of backup power generation. They show on their layout that the plan is to use diesel fuel power as their backup power source. Typically, these sites could require 72 hours of diesel fuel on site. Basic calculations, this is very simple math since they haven't answered it. 600 megawatts of power, you're looking at roughly 1 million gallons of diesel fuel expended a day, burned a day through these generators. Now, please correct me if my math is wrong, but these sites cannot go down. If this data center goes down, their customers could sue them for hundreds of millions to billions of dollars if you think about just the depth and breadth that these data centers have and the number of clients that they're going to be serving. So when the power goes down, these generators will fire up for 24/7 for however many days, burning minimum, from our calculations, they can correct us if our math is wrong, 1 million gallons of diesel fuel a day. Everybody needs to understand that. So what is the plan for diesel fuel storage on site? How many gallons of diesel fuel storage will be required on site? Where is that diesel fuel going to be stored? What is your spill containment? What is your fire containment plan to make sure that we don't have a serious disaster in Oldham County? We also had a presentation regarding the traffic study, and of course the traffic study only looks at the entrance and exit at the particular site on Highway 53. We've estimated, again, very rough numbers. We said minimum 1 million gallons of diesel fuel burned per day when all either 200 or 300, depending on the size of generators, they'll probably have 300 generators on site when they're all powered up and running. 72 hours of diesel storage is 3 million gallons. If they require double redundancy, which maybe might be excessive, but that would get you to 6 million gallons of fuel stored potentially on the site. But just for the million gallons that we're talking about, which would be a pretty low number, we're talking about 125 fuel tanker trucks going through downtown LaGrange just to refill the site for one 24-hour usage of diesel fuel. So let's say we have a power outage for 3 days. You're going to have 125 fuel trucks going through downtown LaGrange to refuel the site, unless they have a different plan in mind for their backup power generation. We learned, we know this already, but that diesel generators release carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, NOx, and also fine particles, which we know are the causes of significant disease. Running these backup generators for 24 hours is basically the same amount of pollutants, the same amount of input into the power generation that is equivalent to 25% of what the Trimble County coal burning power plant generates in a day. It would be the equivalent of burning about 2,000 to 7,000 tons of coal. So for water usage and wastewater management.
Did you have a question regarding the last thing, or are these just comments?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
I was just curious for, I'm Barry Laws, 3411 Fendley Mill Road. We had a beautiful meeting last night. They were talking about all the effects and the particulates of generation from. Well, just wondering, what are the particulates that are coming out of the generation of 600 megawatts? How many particulates are coming out of that?
And we'll just have them answer at the end so y'all can keep getting your questions out.
Well, I'd like to see if they know.
Okay. Yeah.
Huh? Oh, I'm sorry, they don't know. I'm so sorry.
No, okay, focus. We need to focus. Don't speak from the audience, please. If you're going to speak, please speak at the mic.
Okay,
and we're going to give them the time at the end to answer, so as not to waste any more of your time.
Sure. Just to give an idea of this, I figured, and again, they can correct us if we're wrong, particulate matter is about 120 tons a year, about 180 tons of NOx, and about 60 tons of volatile organic compounds. And we learned last night that those are actually not just sitting in one location, they're traveling around. So this is going to affect all of Kentucky. I just wanted to touch base too, just on some wildlife. I noticed on their little board there that we don't care about the eagles, basically. It just doesn't matter. I've got a picture here from February of a junior bald eagle sitting on the bridge at Harrods Creek, right at the corner of this property. Right at the corner of this, could you pull it down? Right at the corner of this property. We also have tricolored bat. We also have Indiana bat. We also have a shellfish that's endangered as well. I also noticed that their ponds were right next to the creek. So what happens? We've got a fire. What happens, Chief? Does there runoff from fire stuff? I imagine there is. So it's going to go into these retaining ponds, then it's going to go into the creek. And, you know, these kids are swimming creeks. They're fishing in the creeks. What's going to happen to these kids swimming in the creek when they have these chemicals running through their bodies? These people don't care. They just want to make some money. So I'm just curious, what's your mitigation for these chemicals that are going to go into the creeks from your runoff, from fires and et cetera?
Is this the sorry, Sarah Little, 231 Washington Circle, LaGrange. Is this the rendering that you all have submitted? Specifically right here, yes or no?
The rendering they submitted as part of their application for TRC is the one that's on our website right now.
All right. That was taken from there, so I'm going to move forward unless any of you tell me
No, that's
otherwise,
not the
but
one that's
yes,
on
that
our
is.
website. That's on maybe theirs, but not ours.
Those green spaces are lovely. Thank you for making sure that those stay there. Take a look at that. Was the traffic study truly conducted only at the entrance of the site? I can see you nodding. Thank you. I'm sure that will be very helpful for all of us who are traveling in LaGrange. Will this site be TIA 942 certified?
They're going to answer at the end, remember?
Yep, if they can. So I definitely would like an answer to that one. TIA 942 accredited or not? In addition, there were a lot of things that we have talked about, questions about the diesel. And yet the presentation was, oh, it'll be 2 to 4 megawatts. Which? And how many of them will there be? Because it says the building capacity and redundancy will determine quantity. Well, since that diesel is going to have a great impact on the environment, I would say we'd want a little more than perhaps, may, could, perhaps, should, propose, typically, sometimes, probably, add to later. So if you can give us answers to all of the questions that we are asking, as one of the proposals that you all presented said, that we will address every concern in the community. If you can do that, that would be great. However, I've heard several people up here say more information is needed. If this is the technical review committee and you all feel that there's still information needed, you cannot go forward with recommending this.
Just as a reminder, we do not make any recommendations to any committees based on this meeting.
Olivia Tipton, 3601 Alexander Drive. I have a very direct question, I think. Mr. Smith, you had said that we have one fire truck that's got a 105-foot ladder, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. In something like this, would one responsive truck be sufficient to put out if there was a fire at the location like this, or is this something that the fire department would actually need additional trucks?
I'll say that we have the one aerial truck that is a 105-foot ladder on it.
Mm-hmm.
I would say just like any, whether it's a single-family dwelling fire and so forth, we have mutual aid agreements with surrounding departments, with South Oldham, with Westport, with, Anchorage Middletown and so forth, that we can call on and get additional resources. Exactly, you're asking me a question I really can't answer. How many 105-foot ladders would I need to fight a fire there? That's a open-ended
Well,
question.
actually, that's helpful, though. So you're saying that the other departments that you just mentioned, do they also have fire trucks with?
Yes.
Okay, they do,
Yeah,
and they would
yeah.
be responsive. So then I guess my question for the developer would be, too, is a lot of times because of servers, would there be a different response to a fire than there would be using water, for instance? Because a lot of times with servers, there's a different form of fire control. Has that been discussed at all? My land touches this, so I'm right there. So I'm concerned, like, if this goes up in flames.
Again, they'll address that at the end.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kurt Allen, I'm a customer of Rootbound Farms, and I have a technical question on benzene.
Address, please.
I wouldn't want you to violate the Open Meetings Act, Section 26 Kentucky Constitution, Section 195, infringement upon the rights of the individual. So
That's
I'm
not
gonna
true. What's
object.
your name again?
Kurt Allen.
Kurt Allen?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so these are technical. Can we turn that screen on? These are the.
Try to speak in the mic the best you can while also
Yes, there was a
referencing
question about is diesel fuel toxic, or rather is it harmful? Or these are some elements of and outcomes. I want to draw particular attention to fetal anomalies, and I will submit these to the commission. And just for sake of time, these are some sources for our colleagues to look these up. And I will give these to you, but just for the sake of time, I will present these to you personally. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you giving me the copy.
Afternoon, Alan Hayes, 2923 North Highway 53, LaGrange, Kentucky, 40031. Going to try to keep it quick. basic question is, has the county received any dispersion modeling incorporating thermal inversions, terrain-driven air stagnation, seasonal vegetation loss, prevailing wind conditions during peak load operation? And have you also modeled how much of your coolant and radiator fluid, et cetera, will be consumed and released into the neighboring community? And without these models, do we know how much of that material will be released into the neighboring community, where it will go, and what the notification will be for neighbors of a major chemical release?
Always have to do this. My name's Jody Curry. I live at 1900 East Mount Zion Road, Crestwood, Kentucky, 40014. I own 2 retail businesses on Main Street in LaGrange. We've received this traffic study, which is just pertinent to this development that, God forbid, actually happens. My question as a Main Street business owner, and there's a lot of us that have the same question, is what happens to us when all the construction traffic starts? What happens when all the trucks and tanks and big trailers pulling dozers? What happens? If we have a traffic jam on I-71 right now, and we've got a lot of traffic pouring up and down 53, it stops business on Main Street. So what's going to happen to us when all these trucks start going up and down 53 to get to this site? So that's my question, is what can we expect in terms of construction traffic? My other question is, I don't know if this was by choice or by direction that we're having a technical review committee meeting. My question is, there's a lot of requirements for a technical review committee. Did you receive a conservation survey?
We'll go ahead and finish your questions with 1 minute.
Did you receive a conservation survey? Did this group have a neighborhood meeting? Both prerequisites to this happening today.
Hello, I'm Mark Saliga, 3727 Valley Creek Drive, Pendleton, Kentucky. I submitted questions, technical questions to both Jim and to Ryan. I just want to make sure they're in the record that you have them.
Yes, he forwarded them to me. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to submit for the record, Nathan Oberg, 1414 Yeager Lane, LaGrange, Kentucky. How many transmission service requests has Western Hospitality Partners submitted to LG&E and for the Independent Transmission Organization, and for which sites? Does WHP, the developer, plan to flip the land and sell to a different developer?
Again, not technical.
Okay.
That was
well, I
already
think it is
stated.
technical because they made that statement. The current application and site plan under review claims and assumes the developer will be the actual ones developing and building this project. Does the applicant plan to be the actual responsible party or the end user of this project? Are you guys going to build these buildings?
Again, not technical.
They just said that they made us believe that they are.
Okay, well, again, not technical. We have 1 second left. Okay, so time is up for public comment. Remember, we gave
You're well
you
within your authority to grant more time. We respectfully
we
asked
already
for
gave
2 additional
you
minutes for this
double
man.
the time. No, you can email. I'm gonna put on the website. No, I'm sorry. We already gave double. You can boo me all you want.
Would the people of Oldham
If
County
you're
want
gonna boo,
2 additional minutes? Would the people of Oldham County like 2 additional minutes?
No.
2 minutes is all we ask for. 2 minutes. Respectfully, we ask for 2 minutes.
We've already granted you double. We've already granted you double the time. Now I am going to provide the contacts for LG&E and Oldham County Water.
My question's about where's the water going to be sourced and where's the water going to be discharged.
Please leave.
I test.
But we've already closed.
He has no
public
objection
comment.
to this.
Please, we've already closed public comment.
There's no objection.
Please, we've already closed
to
public
the question.
comments. We've already granted you double the time. We've already granted you double the time.
I test
leave
water
the
in a closed loop system for AT&T.
We've granted you double the
and the
time.
water we test is testing for
We've
heavy
granted
metals.
you double the time.
We test for heavy metals and we treat it with nitrates.
We've granted you.
And so my question is when we have to evacuate the closed loop system, where do we discharge the water? I know you don't want to hear the question. I'm saying, where is the water going to be discharged? And they can answer on the website. I won't take any more time.
So, okay, so we're going to have the applicant answer the questions. Keep in mind, John Bevlin, I believe Bevington is his name for LG&E, Roxanne Fry, and Paul Weiss, or Weiss, whatever his last name is, from LG&E. I will make sure to provide those email addresses on our website under the TRC page where their applications already are, along with Oldham County Water and the contact information, so you can reach out to them directly since they refuse to have someone here today. But I'm going to give time for the applicant to address the questions, and then I believe some of the committee members might have answers to some of the questions provided. I have at least answers to 2 of the questions that were provided. So we're going to start with the applicant.
Whose notebook is that? Okay. We'll make sure it gets back to the... It does. It's not a bad notebook. Okay.
We'll do 40 minutes as well, but I mean, he's trying to answer your questions that you provided.
We will try to get done in less than 40 minutes.
Okay,
we want
sounds
to be
good.
respectful of everybody's
Chrissy will put
afternoon.
40 minutes for us. Thanks.
First, just as a preliminary matter, and this is, really kind of for everybody in the room. As a preliminary matter, you all are talking about enforcing the Oldham County zoning ordinance, correct? And that's what we're talking about today, largely. I know that there are other local ordinances. Obviously, there's NFPA standards, there's Board of Health standards, but these are all local requirements. These are all local ordinances that this local board is reviewing and asking questions about. A lot of the questions that I heard, that I made note of, dealt with federal requirements, dealt with state requirements, ANSI standards, things like that. We're not going to spend a lot of time going down different roads that aren't relevant to what this committee does, which is enforcing local ordinances. Okay? So questions about, where the cooling water goes, I think are probably appropriate because that deals with stormwater and detention. What exactly is in the cooling water? That's something that is outside of the purview of the local agencies we're talking about today. So, I will do my best to answer questions. I'll bring up members of the team to see who the best person is to answer as we go through. So, with regard to pretty much all of the agency comments, those are things that are largely going to be reflected on the plan. And so that's going to be Derek Triplett and Eric Sen, Land Design. They will go back and look at the plan, see what changes need to be made. They may reach back out to you with questions between now and the time we get to any hearing. With regard to, I had one question for you, Mr. Silliman. And I may betray a little ignorance here. When you said aligning outlet structures with the water bodies in which they're discharging, is that a 45-degree angle? Is that completely consistent? Can you help me understand that a little bit?
Well, there's not a definite answer for that.
Okay.
Completely consistent is probably impossible because you'd have to be discharging directly in the stream, just so it's not perpendicular and causing erosion on the other bank. I guess since you asked me to speak, I'll add also. I think I do agree with you to some extent in that what regulations we're trying to uphold, and you're correct in that like stormwater is directly affected by the pollution. And what we'll do is coordinate with those other agencies as needed for their specific regulations on materials, because our ordinance may not specifically have those individual components that we need to utilize.
Yeah. Okay. One comment, Mr. Ward, you mentioned the map that you were looking at. That was a map from March. Obviously, the plan changed a little bit between then and the time of submission and obviously today. We fully understand that there is a process where you will have to go out and finally locate things, but that time is probably after
far
today's meeting.
down the road. Yes.
So with regard to, I think you answered, Arthur, the battery question already that Fire Marshal Smith had in your comments. Yeah, okay. All right. That's okay. I think that's already covered. So the real questions, I would say, started with Jamie Hilgon's. So spill containment, I think this was stated earlier that the tanks that would hold any fuel that would be used in generators are double wall tanks, so there's containment there. And down to the next level of detail we probably haven't gotten yet. And again, that's not something that is a local requirement. With regard to fire suppression, Arthur, did you talk about that one? Andrew, sorry. Did you talk about that one earlier? Come on up.
Yeah. I think there was a question about special fire suppression systems because it's IT equipment, because it's computer equipment. The fire suppression system is predominantly a water-based system. So if there is a fire in the data hall, it's water from the local utility gets discharged. There's no special chemicals in that water system. It's a pre-action system. The pipes that feed the water are dry and they're charged with nitrogen, which is an inert gas. If there's a fire, it allows water from the local water system to go in. The mist system that I was talking about, that's also a water-based system. There's no special chemicals involved in that. So.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry about that. There were questions about additional buildings. I'm not really sure what that was about. Fuel storage. Usually the fuel storage, I think, as Andrew testified before, is adjacent to or under each generator. When it comes to processed wastewater, there isn't a water process involved here. I mean, this is largely electricity in and data out. So there's not processed wastewater to be concerned about. The diesel backup, how much fuel per 24 hours? I don't know that we have a hard number that we can share with you right now. And again, as we get to the Board of Adjustment, we will probably be in a position to provide that answer because I think that goes to the broader conditional use permit standard. With regard to the traffic study, we've already heard comments from Mr. Silliman. We will go back and beef that up a little bit in order to try to come up with an approximation of construction. Again, typically traffic studies are based on the built condition. So it's today to the built condition. You're using existing counts on the road. You're assigning a generation number to the total use. And then you're coming up with a formula to determine whether you need turn lanes, whether you need improvements. Diane did go through that exercise, but because these questions were raised, we'll go back and try to address those. A question about particulates in the generation. I think there's a concern, I've certainly heard this, a concern that diesel generation is going to be something that happens with some frequency here. Just again, to kind of reiterate, the line that runs past the site is the highest voltage line that LG&E has. It is almost a direct connection to the power plant itself. So if there is a break there, we all have. Anybody who's served by the Trimble County Power Plant has issues. It is not designed and the diesel generation is not designed to augment the power that is used in the facility. It is designed to be really a last ditch sort of effort in order to keep the facility running. So I think if you're talking about the particulates that are associated with electricity, that really is a question for what is coming out of the Trimble County Power Plant. That's not something that's really on site. TIA 942, again, that was an ANSI, ANSI standard. That's not part of the zoning ordinance. With regard to how many trucks to fight fires and how to deal with fires, that is much more in the fire professionals' wheelhouse. The only thing that I'll say about that is the party that has the most to lose in a fire is going to be the owner of the data center. And so they're going to want to make sure that's, yeah, right. I mean, it's just a fact. So they're going to want to make sure that whatever fire suppression system they have is both effective and non-disturbing to their assets that are on the site. That is something that, again, is not a subject of the comprehensive zoning ordinance. It is something that we'll deal with LaGrange Fire about. There was a question I couldn't quite get about chemical release notification. I think that there are state standards if there's any kind of chemical release, but there's not. We have no processed chemicals here. I don't anticipate that there would be a chemical release of any kind. There's a question about construction traffic, as I mentioned that already. We have had 2 community meetings. We had 2 community open houses. They were separated by a couple of weeks. As I said, we also have a Facebook group. We also have a website that has information on it and opportunities to interact. So I think that we have engaged really in a good faith effort to communicate with the community. And I think those were really the questions that I made note of during the presentation. And I'm happy to wrap up at this point if you are.
Well, I'll add also with regard to the chemical release, we do have a local illicit discharge ordinance.
Okay.
So, but again, just like many of these other ordinances, we communicate and work with other agencies, whether it's the Division of Water or Army Corps of Engineers, to proceed with those. So we do have some means to address that.
Okay, so regarding the conservation survey, I'm not sure if the person who asked that question was getting confused with conservation zoning. I'm not sure if there is a conservation easement on that property.
There's not.
We can't talk from the audience, but I'll have you email me for clarification. But then neighborhood meetings, so not everyone who comes to technical review committee is required to do a neighborhood meeting. For example, the Griffith Event Center came to TRC, and they were also required to go to Planning Commission after due to traffic generation numbers, and they were not required to do a neighborhood meeting. Only time neighborhood meetings are required is for zoning map amendments and preliminary subdivision plans. So just to clarify that, and please, our public comment is closed.
Okay. We did, so I'm not, I don't want to mistake a term of art, but I will say, and it was included in our presentation earlier.
Okay.
We did hire RES to do environmental reconnaissance on the property.
Right.
We have, as Mr. Ward mentioned, already gone out and tested the soils. We have hired a geotechnical engineer to look at the site and test for bedrock. We have examined the property pretty thoroughly. Now, Mr. Silliman, you mentioned a need to tighten that up because of the difference, let's say, between what was on the res information and what USGS has. And obviously, as we move forward, we will do that. So I'm not sure if those elements of identifying habitat, identifying waterways, testing soils, and checking for bedrock would constitute the conservation survey that the member of the audience was asking about. But I would expect there's not much else about the land you're going to learn. So I do think that we have done that homework and we've provided that for you.
Do we have any other comments by the agencies or comments by the applicant? Yes, please.
After this meeting's over, if anybody has any on-site sewage, there's like septic questions, not just general environmental health, but my main role with all this was on-site sewage disposal, septic. If you have any questions about that, come find me outside the hallway. I will stay here, not all night, but as long as I can to work with everyone, okay? We all work for you all. Our tax dollars pay your salaries, okay? We're trying to be here in abundance as much as we can, and I'm not playing up to it, but you all have to understand, like, these questions, they're good questions. They're feeling questions. They need to be asked and answered, but this is not it right here, okay? But if you still have questions, want to know what time the sun comes up tomorrow, meet me out back. I'll still be out here, okay? I'll stick around and answer whatever you want to have, but I just want to say that because I don't want to feel like they're not going to be heard. We want to hear you, but these meetings are structured in a way that it is what it is, okay? It might not be okay, but that's what we have to work with right now because we make no decision what happens with this. It's just to bring it up to light. So I'm willing to stay a little longer. You want to meet me out back, I'll hang around, I'll answer some questions as best as I can for you, okay? All right.
Okay, so at this time, this finishes the data center item on the agenda. So I ask that if you're not going to stay for the next one, please leave quietly and efficiently as to not disrupt the next agenda item. Thank you. C-25-010 coffee shop rezoning. I'm going to ask the applicant or their representative to come forward and give a brief overview of the application.
All right, my name is Joey Mackin. I'm with Bowman Consulting, representing the property owner. Address is 3001 Taylor Spring Drive, Louisville, Kentucky 40220. The property in question is 1913 through 1919 South Highway 53, LaGrange, Kentucky 40031. We're proposing a rezoning from C1, which is the local business district, to C2, which is the community business district. The purpose of the rezoning is to provide a drive-through for the vacant store that is located to the rear of the building, which is 1913 South Highway. The user, which you mentioned in the last case that we hadn't found a user, and they actually did since our time of application, it's going to be Big B Coffee. It's BIGGBY, Big B Coffee. So again, the purpose of the rezoning is to allow a drive-through for that vacant store in the rear. To the back of the existing building, there's currently a two-way drive aisle that will be converted to one-way, and then that will allow for the drive-through and then a bypass lane to the right of the drive-through. We're proposing 6 additional parking spaces for employees, and the plan proposes an extension of the existing 8-foot fence all the way down to the existing dumpster. We had our neighborhood meeting, and the property owners to the rear had some clear concerns about that screening and just trying to maximize their screening there. And our owner, the property owner, was at the meeting, and he agreed to, in addition to the 8-foot fence that's required, he agreed to put some additional screening trees in between the 8-foot fence and the back of curb. At the neighborhood meeting, they were also concerned with some crime on the property. So I mentioned that I'd bring that up in this meeting to just try to bring, maybe some attention. Maybe the right ears will hear that, and they'll start to focus on that. So I just wanted to mention that. And then that's all I've got. I was gonna make a joke that there wouldn't be any diesel on the property, but it's probably not right. And I said it anyways. So if you have any questions, I'm here.
Okay, thank you. We have agency comments, and I created the agency comment letter for planning and development. So please, first of all, add a date to your plan, and then also I would like you to indicate the different suites to the building, just to add that clarity. And I'm going to give you a copy of this, by the way. Are there 3 suites or 4 suites? It's kind of hard to tell. I mean, I drive back and forth past there regularly. There's 3. Okay. And then correct the property ownership. It references somebody that's not the same person as what's on the PVA right now. And then note the right-of-way of the lakeside court. Add a legend, which is written in graphical explanation of all symbols and labels. 6, note the location and size of water mains, sanitary sewers, gas lines, fire hydrants, electric and telephone poles, or underground wires where applicable. Note areas of steep slope, over 30%. If there are not areas of steep slope, please note those under the notes section. Add 5 feet contour lines, if not already there. Note the location of existing drainage facilities. Note the direction of storm flow. Note the sanitary sewers. And then I added some mathematical corrections for the parking, required parking spaces. So those are going to be in this letter. And then I had one update to an address for a name on there. So that's from Planning and Development. And then Tim Probus from KU, I feel like my mic's not on, from KU couldn't be here. And they said, Kentucky Utilities does not have any comments at this time. It already has electric service. If any changes need to be made, a load sheet will be required. And then from Jason Richardson at Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, all of these, wait, hold on, that's the wrong one. So he said, no comment at this time. I do have some feedback regarding questions that were received. So yeah, but we'll get to that with the public comment section. So next we're going to move on to Matt Toller from GIS.
I too drive by this every day, and I've never seen any numbers for any of anywhere on that building. So I know that there's a sign that's like sort of on the front. Are you gonna put the business name on that sign? Because I'm not even, since it's in the back, you might have to just be cognitive of the, of the fact that, having whatever 1913, to have it some way to have people know that it is in the back. Like, how are the employees going to get in there? Do they share an entrance, or do you know?
The entrances will stay the same, but there's a storefront already there next to that smoke shop. I can point it out.
And this is why I indicated to note that, because it's kind of hard to tell.
Yeah. Also, is the door like over here?
Mm-hmm. It's existing there.
Is that posted on there, or is it not yet? Oh, it is? All right. I drive this way. I've never really paid attention. Because I thought that there's a sign here that like faces 53.
If you can try to say these comments. Sorry. He was just saying basically the layout and that the 1913 signage is already there. And by the way, with this rezoning process, they'll have to go to Planning Commission. And so like these plans will be updated after this meeting, and everyone who's notified today will get an updated version with the notifications for Planning Commission, just of these updates that everyone's going to ask for.
Yeah, like
and
I said.
We'll break out the stores. That way it's more clear on the
But
plan.
I do know that I think that there's a sign that fronts 53. Are you planning on putting like the name of the business on that sign? Because I think it's just the Gaddy Eye Care. I think
it's the Gaddy Eye Care and the smoke shop currently. I'm not sure how they want to. I'm not sure
Little
how they
bit more
want to do
to
the
my
signs.
All right. Well, I mean, just from 911 purposes, since there is a separate door, just so that but if they're already posted on there, I guess it's just up to you guys to, know.
Yeah, and I'll talk with the owner on that. I'm not sure how they want to.
Because I really didn't even
present
know
the coffee shop.
that there was like another place in the back.
Yeah, it's
until
pretty, it's pretty hidden. I think that's probably why it's been difficult to lease out. Is the
Yeah, and any actual signage that you get will go through code enforcement at the City of LaGrange. Stephanie Winters, who's in our audience right now.
Yeah, that's my only comment though.
Sorry, Jim Silliman, County Engineer.
So when we had a pre-application on this regarding this site, at that time I was suggesting we might have to look at, or have you look at the detention and ensure it is in compliance with current ordinance, because the way our ordinance is written is with land disturbance on an overall development that's greater than an acre. However, requires that it meet that. However, it doesn't look like you're doing any land disturbance. It's just restriping. Yeah. So if that is the case, that there is no actual land disturbance, then the post-construction stormwater ordinance and the construction site ordinance really don't get triggered yet. So you don't have to worry about that. Now, with that said, I think we did talk about, or I sent an email to Doug at your office, that this is located within the Curry's Fork watershed. Curry's Fork's impaired watershed that we have. We get 319H federal dollars, the county does, to work on water quality improvements. So any water quality improvements you could implement would be greatly appreciated and could potentially be credited as a local match towards the 319H grants. We can talk to you more about that. Yeah. Anna mentioned Jason Richardson with KYTC. And again, just looking at the traffic trip generation of the individual uses that you've given, it seems to be probably less than 100 peak hour trips. And I think that's why maybe Jason wasn't requiring a TIS traffic impact study. But he did have some good suggestions that would be useful to ask. And one was he was suggesting a cross connection between Mortensen and the AT&T store parking lot.
Sorry, I'll give you these comments at the end.
To ensure that, or to try and get people to use the existing traffic signal So if you could have some further conversation with KYTC about that, and Anna will give you his contact information, that'd
Yeah,
be
I've got
really
Jason's.
helpful. I know that stuff, typically hinges on people and their willingness to offer easement, access easements. So it's not guaranteed, but it's worth a discussion.
In those comments that he had were referenced. I sent him some public comments from Gaddy Eye Center that we received, questions, and so he was addressing those. So when we get to that point, I'll mention his answers.
Now Keith Smith from LaGrange Fire Department.
Oh, wait, was that all you had? Sorry. Okay, just making sure. Thanks. Go ahead.
I have no comments. I'm familiar with the property and everything about it, so.
Okay. I was going to ask you if the one-way affected anything or not, but no comments, good.
I'm sorry. No, sir. As I say, I know what it was. I know what you're going to do. You're basically splitting that middle part, vape shop, as you're looking at on the left, storefront there, and then you're installing a drive-through down the back side of it, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
And then the bypass lane on the other side.
Yes, sir. Yep. I have no comments.
Okay, finally, Scott Treese with LaGrange Utilities.
Yep, so the only comment I have is we do have a fog program, so since you're retrofitting this to a service type of establishment, you can go to our website, lagrangeutilities.com. Our fog application's on there. And it would be, in a retrofit, it's usually like an under sink type unit. But you can go through those calculations and submit that to us.
Okay.
Okay, I believe that ends the agency comment period. Now we're on to the public comments. We're going to keep the 40-minute time limit for this one as well. Keep in mind these are questions technical in nature, and I will remind you if they're not. But do we have anyone with questions before I get to the submitted one? Please state your name and address.
Stephanie Winther, Code Enforcement Officer with the City of LaGrange, 307 West Jefferson. I just want to touch on what you said with the parking. They're adding 6 more parking spots, but you said that maybe there was something different.
Sorry, I gave her my letter.
That's
Let me
okay.
look at theirs.
That would be our only technical question and
Yes.
concern, because right
Yes.
now it's a 2-lane behind the building, but that 1 lane is completely used for parking. So I didn't know what the parking restrictions were for spots.
Yeah, so the requirement, it's interesting because there's 3 different users.
Right.
Well, actually, part of the thing I was confused about was there were 2 retail spaces listed like towards the top. And so I was confused whether there were 3 or 4 units, and that affected the calculation. So there's a requirement for medical clinics should be listed as a minimum of 24 parking spaces. And they had... Okay, so they had a minimum of 25, and then the requirement for a coffee shop should be listed as a minimum of 6, and they had 7 as the minimum required, and then the requirement of coffee shop for a maximum should be 10, and they had 14, and I explained the calculation. So the total maximum allowed should be 82, with the minimum allowed or minimum required being 46.
Okay, and per that plan, none of those should be that driving lane behind the building, then they should
Correct.
all be parking spaces.
Correct.
Okay, that's all I need.
Okay, thank you.
Mary Lowry, 326 Maple Avenue, Pewee Valley. So since Jim mentioned the South Curry's Fork watershed, I walked in later, but we at the Conservation District implement the grant work for the South Curry's Fork watershed. So we would love any matching funds, best practices. We have a lot of programs that you may be interested in. So I encourage you to come visit it with us. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comments before I read the ones that we received? Okay, so I'm going to start with Gaddy Eye Center questions. So the first one was, I'm just going to read all of them and then read the response that Jason Richardson from KYTC gave for things. And then I believe there may be more of a response from Jim, or maybe not. Okay, how will the increased traffic flow from the drive-through coffee shop be managed to ensure the safety of mobility challenged and visually impaired patients accessing the eye care facility at the front of the building? Are there any specific measures or plans in place to mitigate the risk of accidents involving patients with vision and mobility impairments due to increased traffic? How will the proposed drive-through coffee shop affect the availability of parking spaces for patients of the eye care facility? So I think we kind of already addressed that one. And then what steps will be taken to ensure that patients have convenient and accessible parking, especially during peak hours when drive-through traffic is likely to be high? What traffic flow management strategies will be implemented to prevent congestion and ensure smooth access to the eye care facility? 6, are there any plans to create designated lanes or areas to separate drive-through traffic from the parking and pedestrian areas used by patients? 7, has an environmental impact assessment been conducted to evaluate the noise and pollution levels that may affect the eye care facility and its patients? 8, what long-term impacts are anticipated from the drive-through coffee shop on the overall accessibility and functionality of the eye care facility? And 9, are there plans for periodic reviews and adjustments to address any foreseen issues that may arise after the drive-through is operational? So, and some of these may just be conversations that you follow up directly with them, or the owner follows up directly with them. So, but I went ahead and sent these to KYTC since I knew they wouldn't be here, just so maybe they could address these since this was sent with plenty of time. So he said all these questions regarding internal circulation on the site, not the interaction site, or all these questions are regarding internal circulation on the site, not the interaction of site traffic with KY 53. It is outside the KYTC's authority to dictate how those issues would be addressed or whether any future monitoring within the site, et cetera, would occur. Taking notes of concerns raised, I would strongly recommend a cross connection between the AT&T building and Mortensen Family Dental in order to concentrate entering movements at the traffic center and then eliminate the access point to 53 between AT&T and Gaddy Eye Center. I think making that cross connection and having traffic enter from the signal would help slow inbound movements versus vehicles using the access adjacent to Gaddy Eye Center and darting almost directly into the drive-through line from KY 53. But again, this is just my opinion since it affects internal circulation more so than the interaction of site traffic entering and exiting 53. So that was his response, which you'll have a copy of as well. And then from Jim Allen of Crystal Lake Subdivision, he has four overall question or statements, I guess, and then the questions. So let's see. He asked if it's possible to limit the rezoning to a specific use and that specific part of the building. Unfortunately, when you rezone, you have to rezone the whole parcel. I don't believe you can rezone parts of parcels. Is there a way to prevent future drive-through access from other suites of the building, like the smoke shop? I believe that would have to be done as like a binding element if the applicant agrees to that. If the rezoning were to be approved, what would limit the reuse of the building or the lot? I'm not exactly sure what he means by that. Or can the drive-throughs use be limited to the sale of coffee, or is it a general dispensary? And then security, what can be done to provide monitoring and security for that area? How would lighting be done to avoid bothering the neighbors? Obviously, lighting regulations would have to be followed. And then you can address code enforcement if there's been issues. Will there be an external order kiosk? I think some of this was addressed at the neighborhood meeting already. How will additional landscape buffers be addressed? And will a landscape waiver be needed? And then what is the best way to enforcement the barriers to my R2 neighborhood behind will be maintained regularly when it is already lacking. Apparently, businesses cannot be held accountable for their trash their customers leave behind. What can be done to limit and manage the trash from the coffee customers? Is the plan to make the passage behind the building one-way or two-way? Will parking behind the building be eliminated in this plan? We already addressed that. Has the staff parking been included in the congestion planning for Gaddy's lot? You can address that in a minute. What's the traffic congestion plan if a window service backs up? Will there be sufficient stop in and buy parking in front of the coffee shop in case road becomes congested or service delayed? How will the signage accomplish one-way restrictions? And I'll give you a copy of all this in case you want to address any of these questions. And if anybody, I'm going to let you address them first, along with
Yeah, that was a lot. I'll try.
yeah, I know it's a lot, and you can also reach out to them later, or if you'd like me to reach out, give them your contact information, I can as well. But questions are in here if you want to reference them, since I assume you didn't memorize them. And there's just multiple copies.
The one you just read, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, you went over the rezoning for the entire lot, so that would cover that. It's creepy. Okay, yeah, I can answer a lot of these. All right. The lighting, we addressed that during the neighborhood meeting. They agreed to put screens on the lighting there to the rear. I'm not sure. It had to have been up to code, but I think they're agreeing to put additional screening on the lights. Where there'll be an external order kiosk, yes. How will additional landscape buffers be addressed? I don't believe we need a waiver. Correct?
You'll have to submit a landscaping plan if there's any changes, and we'll review it we can review it before we get to the next step. So I'll make a note to review that.
Okay. The trash cans to the rear of the building already shed a lot of garbage into the neighborhood. We talked about that in the neighborhood meeting as well. Is there any kind of binding element that you can do to ensure that it's clean regularly?
I mean, that we can talk with the county attorney, and then you'll have legal representation at that meeting at Planning Commission. So if there's something that your legal representation wants to come up with, and then it would likely be enforced through the city's code enforcement on that binding element. And any binding elements that are created are filed with the certificate of land use restriction in the deed room. So if y'all would like to come up with a binding element proactively, that can always be helpful.
Yeah, I think we'll do that. And then also the landscaping. They were just required that 8-foot fence. I think we were going to put a binding element to say that we'll add the landscape buffer trees in between the back of curb and the fence, that way it's in writing. When I visit Dr. Gaddy's office, there's a lot of parking lot congestion. I think a lot of that comes with the parking that's already being used in that alley, where you've got a two-way coming, but you've got people parking on one side of the two-way. So I think this will actually kind of combat that, where it's simply a one-way access, and then we'll just have striping there at the end of the bypass lane and the drive-through.
And if you can try to speak in the mic just a little bit more, sorry. Thanks.
Did you all hear all that though? I need to repeat myself. Okay, I think that covers all of it. Yeah, how will signage accomplish the one-way restriction? If we're required to put a sign there at the end of the one-way, we can, but if not, we'll just do it with striping. Yeah. And then same with the Kepler. A lot of their concerns were their clients walking out into the drive-through. I think we're required 5 stacking spaces, and I believe we achieved that just along the back of the building, so it shouldn't affect any of their clients walking across the parking lot. But if it does back up, I think Jason Richardson mentioned we could put just some striping for a crosswalk across to the AT&T, because there's some additional parking over there, so we can do that. We can just put a little striping in. Some of these I can't add. Yeah, what is the...
You're more than welcome to meet with their team as well. I can put y'all in contact if you'd
Yeah,
like.
I can't answer 8 or 9, so
Okay.
at least right now I can't. But yeah.
Okay. Well, do we have any last minute? So no other public comments? Okay. Any other agency questions? Okay. Well, if you got notified of this meeting today, you will be notified for the coffee shop rezoning. You'll be notified for the Planning Commission one whenever, if and when they decide to proceed to Planning Commission for that zoning map amendment, which is held in the same room on the 4th Tuesday of each month. And this meeting will now be adjourned. Thank you all for attending.